The studio lights blazed like miniature suns, casting everything in that perfect late-night television glow that made even coffee cups look cinematic. Camera operators moved with practiced precision around the gleaming set of The Tonight Hour, their equipment gliding silently across the polished floor. The iconic New York skyline sparkled through floor-to-ceiling windows behind the host's desk, each light a distant star in the urban constellation. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed over the thunderous applause. "Please welcome the incomparable Taylor Swift." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The audience erupted. 300 people rose to their feet as Taylor emerged from backstage, her sequined dress catching the studio lights like scattered diamonds. She moved with that effortless grace that had been perfected through years of red carpets and award shows, her smile radiant and camera ready. But behind her sparkling blue eyes, something sharper flickered, a wariness honed by countless interviews where charm could quickly turn to combat. The late-night host bounded up from behind his mahogany desk, arms spread wide in theatrical welcome. His perfectly styled hair caught the lights just right, his designer suit impeccable. Everything about him screamed calculated charisma, from his million-dollar smile to the way he adjusted his tie with practiced timing. "Taylor Swift, everyone!" He gestured grandly toward her, soaking in the audience's adoration as if it were meant for him. "The woman who needs no introduction but somehow always gets one anyway." Taylor laughed, a genuine sound that momentarily softened her guarded expression. She settled into the guest chair, smoothing her dress with unconscious elegance. The host returned to his throne behind the desk, leaning forward with the predatory focus of someone who lived for these moments under the lights. "So Taylor," he began, his voice dripping with mock sincerity, "I have to ask, when you're touring stadiums with 80,000 screaming fans, do you ever miss the intimate charm of, say, a coffee shop performance?" The audience chuckled. Taylor's smile remained steady, but her fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around the arms of her chair. "Well," she replied smoothly, "I think there's magic in both. Whether it's one person or 80,000, music creates connection." "Connection," the host repeated, drawing the word out like he was tasting wine. "Speaking of connection, I heard your latest tour grossed more than some small countries' GDP. That must feel overwhelming." There it was, the first subtle jab wrapped in conversational velvet. Taylor's media-trained radar pinged with recognition. The host's tone carried just enough edge to cut, delivered with just enough charm to maintain plausible deniability. His eyes glittered with anticipation, waiting to see how she'd respond. The studio audience watched with bated breath, sensing the shift in energy even if they couldn't quite name it. This was supposed to be a celebration, a victory lap for Taylor's incredible success. Instead, the air crackled with something electric and dangerous. Taylor's smile never wavered, but her voice carried a new precision when she answered. "Success is never overwhelming when it comes from genuine artistry and connecting with people who understand your work." The host's grin widened. "Game on." The host leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled like a chess master contemplating his next move. "You know, Taylor, I was looking at your tour numbers. Truly impressive stuff. Though I have to wonder." He paused for comedic timing, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make everyone lean forward. "When you're performing for stadium crowds, does it ever feel like a really expensive school recital?" The audience burst into laughter, louder and more sustained than expected. Taylor's perfectly practiced smile flickered for just a fraction of a second, like a candle flame in a sudden breeze. She recovered instantly, but the cameras caught everything. "Well," she said, her voice honey-sweet, but with steel underneath, "I suppose if school recitals involved pyrotechnics, costume changes, and a few Grammy-winning songs, then sure." "Ah, yes, the awards!" The host pounced on the opening like a predator sensing weakness. "Speaking of which, I have to ask, do you ever get tired of giving those never-ending acceptance speeches? I mean, at this point, you must have them memorized, right? Thank you to my fans, thank you to my team, thank you to my cat. Eel." More laughter rippled through the studio. And this time, Taylor's jaw tightened visibly. The host's impression had been deliberately exaggerated, making her sound vapid and rehearsed. The mockery wasn't subtle anymore. It was weaponized humor designed to diminish her. "Actually," Taylor said, her voice carrying a new edge, "I think gratitude is never something to apologize for, especially when you have genuinely amazing people supporting your work." The host's eyes glinted with satisfaction. He'd drawn first blood, and the audience's energy was feeding his confidence. "Oh, absolutely," he said with false sincerity. "Gratitude is beautiful, though I do wonder if there's a word limit on these things." Taylor's smile was becoming a masterclass in restraint. The host shuffled through his note cards with theatrical flair, squinting at them as if discovering their contents for the first time. "Now, I absolutely have to talk about your latest collaboration, working with... Let me get this right." He held the card closer to his face, making a show of struggling with pronunciation. Quote, ... Bon Iver? Bon Iver? Bon Iver, Taylor corrected gently, though her voice carried a hint of frost. "It's pronounced Bon Iver, Justin Vernon." Right, Bonnie Bear, got it." The host grinned and tossed the card aside carelessly. "You know, these indie artist names are just impossible, aren't they? I mean, why can't everyone just be named Bob or Steve? Makes life so much easier." The audience's laughter this time was noticeably uneven, some people chuckling nervously while others remained conspicuously silent. A few audience members exchanged uncomfortable glances, sensing the deliberate nature of the mistake. Taylor's posture straightened, her media training warring with her growing irritation. "Actually, his name is quite beautiful when you take the time to learn it properly. Bon Hiver means good winter in French. It's meaningful and intentional, just like his music." "Oh, absolutely," the host waved his hand dismissively. "I'm sure it's very artistic, though you have to admit it's not exactly Billboard-friendly, is it? I mean, imagine trying to request that on the radio. Hey, can you play that song by, Bone something?" More scattered laughter, but now several audience members weren't even pretending to be amused. Taylor's eyes flashed with something dangerous, a glimpse of the sharp intelligence and fierce loyalty that had powered her through years of industry battles. "I think," she said carefully, each word precisely chosen, "that making an effort to pronounce someone's name correctly is basic respect, especially when you're discussing their artistry on national television." The host's grin faltered for just a moment, before snapping back into place. The host recovered quickly, pivoting with the ruthless efficiency of someone who'd built a career on never letting guests gain the upper hand. He leaned forward, his smile sharpening into something that barely qualified as friendly. "Well, speaking of artistry," he said, drawing the word out with barely concealed mockery, "let's talk about your songwriting process. I'm fascinated by how you turn what most people would call diary scribbles into chart-topping hits." The insult hung in the air like smoke. Several audience members audibly gasped, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Taylor's composure cracked visibly, her carefully maintained smile dissolving into something raw and real. "Diary scribbles?" she repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. "Oh, don't get me wrong." The host held up his hands in mock surrender. "It's brilliant marketing, really. Turn every relationship drama into a 3-minute song. Rinse and repeat. I mean, how many ways can you say he broke my heart and still sell millions of albums? That did it." Taylor's eyes blazed with fury, and when she spoke, her voice cut through the studio like a blade. "You know what's fascinating to me? How someone can sit behind a desk every night, telling the same recycled jokes written by a room full of people, and still have the audacity to question another artist's authenticity." The audience erupted, not in laughter this time, but in genuine applause. The sound rolled through the studio like thunder, and for the first time all evening, the host looked genuinely rattled. "Wow," he said, his voice tight. "Touchy subject, huh?" "Not touchy." Taylor shot back, her composure completely abandoned now. "Just tired of men who've never written a song, never poured their soul onto a page, dismissing female artists as melodramatic when we dare to be honest about our experiences." The applause grew louder. In the front row, a young woman stood up, clapping enthusiastically. Others followed suit, creating pockets of support throughout the audience. The host's jaw clenched. His carefully cultivated persona was slipping, revealing the ego underneath. "I think you might be taking this a little too seriously, Taylor. It's just comedy." "Is it?" Taylor's voice was steel, wrapped in silk. "Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like something else entirely. Something that has very little to do with humor, and everything to do with tearing down what you don't understand." The studio fell silent, except for the hum of cameras still rolling, capturing every electric second. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats before the audience exploded into chaos. Half the crowd was on their feet applauding Taylor's takedown, while the other half laughed nervously at what felt like watching a car crash in slow motion. The energy in the studio had become a living thing, unpredictable, volatile, feeding off the raw tension crackling between host and guest. The host scrambled to regain control, his professional smile looking increasingly manic. "Well, well. Looks like we've got some real passion here tonight, folks." He tried to pivot with desperate smoothness. "Speaking of passion, let's talk about your upcoming." "No." Taylor's voice cut through his attempt like a scalpel. "I'm not done." A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Guests didn't interrupt. They didn't take control. That wasn't how late-night television worked. But Taylor Swift had apparently decided to rewrite the rules in real time. The crowd's energy swung wildly, some people clapping in shocked delight, others laughing at the audacity of it all, while a few sat frozen in uncomfortable silence. The host's face cycled through surprise, annoyance, and something approaching panic. "I mean," Taylor continued, her voice gaining strength from the audience's chaotic support, "if we're going to discuss artistry, let's be thorough. Let's talk about how your writers craft these spontaneous moments, or how many takes it took to get that perfect opening monologue." Half the audience roared with laughter and approval. The other half looked mortified, as if witnessing a public execution. The host's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. For perhaps the first time in his career, he was genuinely speechless. "Oh, come on!" someone shouted from the balcony. "Let her speak! This is amazing!" Another voice called out, followed by wild cheering. But not everyone was entertained. "This is uncomfortable," a woman near the front whispered loudly enough for the microphones to catch. The audience had fractured into factions, their competing energies, creating a pressure cooker atmosphere. Every laugh felt loaded. Every clap sounded like a judgment. The host wiped sweat from his forehead, his carefully crafted persona crumbling under the weight of an audience that no longer knew which side to support. Behind the cameras, shadows moved frantically, producers gesturing, assistants whispering urgently into headsets. The show had officially gone off the rails, and everyone knew it. The host finally found his voice, but it came out higher than usual. "I think maybe we should take a commercial break?" Taylor finished for him, her smile returning with razor-sharp precision. What a brilliant idea. Beyond the camera's reach, chaos reigned. Jonathan, the show's veteran producer, stood frozen behind the control booth monitors, his headset crackling with panicked voices from the network executives upstairs. 23 years in television, and he'd never seen anything like this. Cut to commercial. He barked into his microphone, then immediately contradicted himself. "No, wait. Keep rolling. This is television gold." "Jonathan," his assistant whispered urgently, "legal is freaking out. They want to know if we should pull the plug." Across the studio floor, Maya Chen stood pressed against the backstage curtain, her phone buzzing incessantly with calls from Taylor's team. As Taylor's PR manager, she'd weathered every storm from Kanye Gate to the Masters controversy. But watching her client dismantle a late-night host in real time was uncharted territory. During the commercial break, Maya caught Taylor's eye and mouthed, "You okay?" Taylor nodded once, her jaw set with determination that Maya recognized, the same look she'd worn during the darkest days of her Reputation era. Jonathan emerged from the booth, his face flushed as he approached the host's desk. "Hey," he whispered urgently, "maybe dial it back a notch." "She's not backing down." The host straightened his tie, his ego bruised but his competitive instincts flaring. "I've got this," he hissed back. "She wants to play hardball? Fine." Maya watched the exchange with growing dread. She'd seen that look on powerful men before, the look of someone who'd rather burn the studio down than admit they'd been outmaneuvered by a woman. 30 seconds! The stage manager called out. The host returned to his chair, his smile wider and more predatory than before. Jonathan's warning had done the opposite of its intended effect. Instead of retreating, the host was doubling down. Back in 5, 4, 3. The red light blinked on, and Maya held her breath. The real battle was just beginning. "And we're back!" The host's voice boomed with false enthusiasm. His smile stretched tight as a wire. "We're here with Taylor Swift, who's been giving us quite the spirited interview tonight." The word, spirited, dripped with condescension, and Taylor's eyes flashed dangerously. She'd spent the commercial break watching him huddle with his producer, seen the way he'd straightened his shoulders like a boxer preparing for another round. "You know what?" Taylor said, abandoning all pretense of promotional pleasantries. "I think we need to address what's really happening here." "Oh, here we go," the host muttered, loud enough for the microphones to catch. "Excuse me?" Taylor's voice cut through the studio like a whip crack. "You've spent this entire interview undermining my work, mispronouncing my collaborators' names, and reducing my artistry to teenage diary entries. When exactly did this stop being an interview and become a roast?" The audience fell silent, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't banter anymore. This was war. The host leaned back, his grin turning vicious. "Oh, come on, Taylor. Don't you think you're taking yourself just a little too seriously? I mean, we're having fun here. It's comedy. Entertainment." "Fun?" Taylor's composure finally shattered completely. "Who's fun? Because I'm sitting here being systematically disrespected on national television while you hide behind the excuse of comedy to tear down everything I've worked for." Audible gasps rippled through the audience. Someone in the front row whispered, "Oh my God," loud enough for the cameras to pick up. "Look," the host said, his voice hardening, "if you can't handle a little playful ribbing, maybe late-night television isn't for you. This is how the game works." Quote, "Game?" Taylor's voice rose, her media training completely forgotten. "This isn't a game. This is my life, my work, my reputation, and you're treating it like a punchline." The studio crackled with electricity, two forces colliding with devastating impact. The host's eyes glittered with malicious satisfaction. He could feel the audience's tension, the producers' panic, the weight of millions watching at home. This was his moment to deliver the killing blow. "You know what, Taylor?" He leaned forward with predatory focus. "I think I've figured out your real talent. It's not the songwriting. It's not the performing. It's the victimhood. You've built an entire empire on being wronged. First it was country music not taking you seriously, then it was Kanye. Then it was your masters, now it's me. Have you ever considered that maybe, just maybe, you're the common denominator here?" The words hit like a physical blow. Taylor's face went completely white, her mouth opening slightly as if the breath had been knocked from her lungs. For a moment that felt like eternity, she just stared at him, utterly speechless. The studio fell into the kind of silence that only comes from collective shock. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath as they lingered on Taylor's face, capturing every micro-expression of hurt and humiliation. The host sat back, triumphant, his smile sharp enough to cut glass. He'd won. Or so he thought. In the deafening quiet, someone in the audience began to slow clap. Not in approval, but in the kind of sarcastic applause reserved for spectacular failures. Others joined in, creating a haunting rhythm that filled the stunned silence. Taylor's eyes never left the host's face, and slowly, something dangerous began to kindle there. The moment the show cut to commercial, the internet exploded. Within 60 seconds, #TaylorSwiftHumiliated was trending on Twitter. Within 5 minutes, shaky phone recordings from audience members flooded TikTok, Instagram stories, and Snapchat. The digital world moved with the ruthless efficiency of a wildfire, consuming and reshaping the narrative faster than any PR team could control. At Swiftie Army 13, "I'm literally shaking. How dare he talk to her like that?" #RespectTaylor at Comedy Fanatic. Finally, someone called her out on her perpetual victim complex. LMAOOO #TellTheTruth. The reactions split along predictable battle lines, but the sheer volume was staggering. Every major entertainment blog was already drafting their hot takes. TMZ's notification had pinged on millions of phones. Taylor Swift loses it on late-night TV, explosive video inside. On TikTok, 17-year-old Taylor Defender had already posted a compilation video titled "Men Being Trashed to Taylor Swift for 2 minutes Straight" that garnered 50,000 views in its first 10 minutes. The comments section became a battlefield. She literally built her career on being a victim, though skull. Imagine being this pressed about a woman's success. The audacity of this man, I'm deceased. Meanwhile, the memes began. Screenshots of the host's smug grin became instant reaction images. Taylor's shocked expression was already being photoshopped into everything from Renaissance paintings to SpongeBob scenes. The internet's capacity for both cruelty and creativity knew no bounds. At Pop Culture Vulture tweeted, "The way Taylor's face just fell. I felt that through my screen. This man really thought he did something, but he just exposed himself as a misogynistic has-been." But the backlash wasn't universal. YouTube comment sections and Reddit threads filled with users dissecting every word, every expression, every pause. She couldn't handle basic late-night comedy banter. Maybe stick to singing about your feelings, T. Swift. Since when did legitimate criticism become humiliation? She's not above being called out. Entertainment Tonight, E! News, and Access Hollywood were already pulling archival footage, crafting segments about Taylor's most controversial TV moments. The machine of celebrity coverage had awakened, hungry and relentless. In her hotel room across town, Maya watched the digital wildfire spread across multiple screens, her phone buzzing incessantly with calls from network executives, publicists, and journalists. Each notification brought a new development: think pieces about misogyny and late-night TV, defense threads from fellow female artists, harsh critiques from comedy purists. The internet had taken what happened in that studio and transformed it into something larger, a cultural moment that transcended entertainment and became a mirror reflecting society's deepest tensions about power, gender, and fame. By morning, the clips would have millions of views. The conversation would dominate news cycles, and both Taylor Swift and her antagonist would wake up to discover that their brief battle had become everyone's war. The glittering studio lights masked brewing tension as Taylor Swift settled into the guest chair. What began as promotional banter quickly soured when the host mocked her school recital tours and diary scribble songwriting. His deliberate mispronunciation of collaborators' names sparked Taylor's first pushback. "Basic respect," she said sharply. The host escalated, dismissing her artistry entirely. Taylor abandoned her polished persona, calling out his systematic disrespect. The audience fractured between support and shock. Then came the killing blow. "You've built an empire on victimhood." Taylor went silent, devastated. Within hours, the internet exploded. Clips went viral, sparking global debate about misogyny in media. The host's hollow apology backfired as sponsors fled. Days later, Taylor responded from her home studio. No glam team, just truth. She reframed the humiliation as a lesson about women's treatment in entertainment, her vulnerability becoming strength. "I don't need permission to feel proud of my work," she concluded. The host learned too late. Underestimating Taylor Swift was a career-ending mistake. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. Quote,